more things change, the more they actually stay the same. That's a quote I heard somewhere, but I forget who exactly said it. But here's just a little bit of proof that that quote actually has some resemblance. The Pleb Reporter points out Mark Carney is going to ban X in Canada if he wins. The Liberals are pure evil. So here we go. More censorship. Yay! This guy has definitely changed. This guy is definitely going to be the best for Canadians. As if we already haven't had the best over a decade with the horribleness of Justin Trudeau and the tyranny. But here's Mark Carney addressing the public that censorship is here to stay. Yay.
Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm.
And that sea is mostly within Parliament. Am I right? A sea. A sea. Oh my God. I really like this monologue here. It reminds me of the Seinfeld episode where George is the marine biologist and he walks in. The sea was angry, my friends. Misogyny, hatred, bigotry, xenophobia, homophobia, as far as I can see. A sea of misinformation. A sea of hatred. You do realize you just replaced the guy who called himself a male feminist, but yet every single female cabinet minister despised him. Despised Justin Trudeau. Because they were either groped, they were lied to, they were blackmailed. In the case of Jody Wilson-Raybould, she was manipulated and forced to lie under oath. Being the former attorney general for Justin Trudeau, people have had to resign, had to quit the cabinet position they were in because of Justin Trudeau's abnormal behavior. But no, let's go after randos on social media. Because God forbid, people having conversations and adding discussions online and thinking critically is so detrimental.
Harm our children. My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong.
So he went from the sea of misogyny and xenophobic and homophobic and all the stuff said on social media to it's going to fight crime. It's going to make Canada stronger. You know, silence is stronger, according to them. Here's a bit of a longer take of this. That was just the short answer, but here's the long answer of Mark Carney just further initializing more and more censorship.
Unfortunately, the rising tide of hatred online is overflowing onto our streets. Violence and intimidation have no place in Canada. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia must be denounced in the strongest possible terms. And I am appalled by the horrific incidents and numerous incidents in our country in recent years. Far too many violent Islamophobic attacks on mosques and other places of worship and community centers across this city and across this country.
So their whole projection of this, the reason why they keep pushing these censorship tactics, again, they tried to make this into good intentions at the start. Just like they did with C11 in the past and C19, or is it 18? 18 or 19? With the Online News Act and the Online Streaming Act, they started off by saying, like, this is supposed to help Canadians. This is supposed to help Canadian publishers and content creators and journalists. This is why we're doing this. We're benefiting you. We're benefiting you. Just like they're doing now with this online hate bill, the Online Harms Act. Bill C-63. They're trying to push this to say that it's going to help Canadians dealing with, cyberbullying, people making threats and violent aggression towards a person. The problem with that is that that's already covered by criminal code. If someone utters a violent threat towards you, that's already covered by criminal code. You don't have to add censorship to that. What they're trying to do is entice that to enforce censorship so that people that are just making accurate criticisms of the government are silenced out. And they want to silence out the competition, which is social media. People on the internet, myself, other podcasters, other independent journalists, True North, Rebel News. That's the whole intent of this. Not to stop crime. It's not to actually inflict on any motion to stop violent rhetoric. It's done purposely to silence out discretion that goes against the establishment. That's why they're pushing for censorship. And look how well it's doing in European nations. Look how well it's doing in the UK when they're arresting their own citizens. Arresting so many people for speech, for thoughts. And they're arresting so many people that they're running out of space in their own prisons. So they're releasing violent criminals. That's what's happening in the UK. That's what's happening in European nations. And they're trying to push that more and more so into our territory. Because when you control information, when you control speech, you control the population. That's the end goal of all this. The end goal is that Mark Carney is installing the wishes of the WEF to take master control over the entire population. How? By censoring them. By controlling what we say, what we think, what we hear, the information that's being presented to us. So, here, from Reclaim the Net, Mark Carney vows internet speech crackdown if elected, citing online pollution of misogyny and conspiracies. Mark Carney dodges Epstein jabs in Hamilton while reviving failed liberal plans for speech control via Bill C-36 and Bill C-63. So he wants to revive the censorship bills that, thank God, since Justin Trudeau stepped down and they had to prologue government, that those failed. Thank God for that. But now Mark Carney wants to reenact that. Wants to bring that back, and hopefully it will pass. Why? Because Mark Carney works for the overlord masters that want to control the thoughts and speech of us. And here's a bit of it from the Western Standard, saying Prime Minister Mark Carney says that he, as re-elected Liberal government, will move forward with new regulations targeting harmful online content, marking a third attempt to legislate internet speech in Canada. BlackRock's reporter, Blacklocks, not BlackRock, just pointing that out, says Carney made the comments during a campaign rally in Hamilton after being interrupted by hecklers. Responding to accusations from the crowd, including questions about ties to late financier Jeffrey Epstein, Carney paused briefly before refocusing his remarks. There are many serious issues that we're dealing with, he said. One of them is the sea of misogyny, anti-Semitism, hatred, and conspiracy. Of course, he's going to say that right after someone noticed that there's hundreds of pictures out there of him tied with Ghislaine Maxwell. That there's numerous reports of Mark Carney's wife growing up with Ghislaine Maxwell and being very close ties to Jeffrey Epstein. All of a sudden, now we got to talk about internet speech. We got to talk about misogyny, anti-Semitism, hatred, conspiracies. Oh my God, these people are going online and learning things about me. This sort of pollution online that washes over our virtual borders from the United States. Oh my God. While Carney said he could tolerate conspiracy theories directed at him personally, no, he can't. No, he can't. Why do you think you brought this to attention immediately after someone heckled you about Jeffrey Epstein? Obviously, you can't even handle journalists. They're giving you softball questions. You cannot handle criticism at all, Mark Carney. That is why you are doubling down on this enforcement, because you can't handle the crowds. You can't handle the truth. He emphasized the broader damage to Canadian society. The more serious thing is when it affects how people behave. When Canadians are threatened going to their community centers or their place of worship or their school, or God forbid it affects our children, he said. My government, if we are elected, will be taking action. God. Carney did not offer specific details on what new legislation might look like. Hate speech is already illegal in Canada under amendments to the Criminal Code introduced in 1970. The Liberal government has twice attempted to pass laws that would allow the regulation of certain forms of legal online content. The most recent proposal, Bill C-63, an act to enact the Online Harms Act, sought to crack down on content considered likely to foment detestation or vilification of individuals or groups. Likely. And again, you don't need this. You don't need this whatsoever. If someone's acting and making utter threats of violence towards an individual, that's already in the criminal code. So having this on top of it is nothing to do with the actual crime that's being committed. It has to do with the fact that they want to silence out discretion. They want to silence out people that have different viewpoints. Remember the fringe minority that have unacceptable views in Canada? Remember that? That's what they want to try and silence out. People that are going against the grain. People that are speaking out. People that are sick and tired of the censored control of the globalization technocracy that has bought out Canada. And they want to silence that even further with Mark Carney. It would have empowered the Canadian Human Rights Commission to investigate related complaints. The bill failed to pass second reading before Parliament was prorogued on January 6. A previous bill with similar aims, C-36, also lapsed without becoming law in 2021. Former Heritage Minister Pascal St-Onge said earlier this year that the government remained committed to addressing online disclosure. We are in challenging times right now, he said on February 20th. Respect is lacking in public discourse. Misinformation circulates easier than facts. Debate is being monetized by algorithms and social media. Respect is lacking in public disclosure. Is it because that we're being told that half the country is awful? Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it has to do with the fact that you're telling Canadians to yell at other Canadians that took part of the Freedom Convoy that they're a bunch of thugs, that they're Nazis, that they're white supremacists, that they're misogynists, that anyone partaking or even coordinating with it or even supporting it is a monster. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it has to do with everyone being conservative being called a Trumper right-winger, and that every liberal is somehow a left-wing knucklehead. Maybe that has something to do with it. But no, it's people online. It's regular people online that have open discussions with other individuals and maybe find some common ground. St-Onge acknowledged the importance of freedom of expression, but argued that is being misused. What? That's why you have freedom of expression. How is freedom of expression being misused? We need to make sure that it exists and that it's protected, she said. Yet the same freedom of expression is currently being exploited and undermined. Hey, we want to protect free speech, but at the same time, we can't have everybody have free speech. We can't allow everybody to have their own thoughts and opinions. This This is literally the most garbage thing I've ever read. And considering the fact that our relatives and people fought and died for the freedoms, for the charter and rights of freedoms of Canadians, fought for their country to respect the ideals of freedom of speech, this is how they're abusing it. Oh, we want to protect freedom of speech, but yet at the same time, we still have to control it. That makes absolutely no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. The Liberal government has not yet specifically or specified how much it would spend on future efforts to regulate digital content. So here is podcaster Jasmine Lane, very, very popular podcaster here in Canada. She interviewed this woman who is an ESG whistleblower and says the interview Mark Carney wants to ban X over. ESG whistleblower Desiree Fixler sounds the alarm on a man she knows on a much deeper level than any Canadian does. Link for the full episode below. So here's a bit of that interview where this whistleblower is going to reveal how the Liberal government is actively engaging in silencing Canadians and the real intent behind this. Watch.
You know, the government has a lot of control on the media.
Mark Carney, who is out in Montreal today announcing that if he's elected, he would like to increase the funding for CBC Radio Canada. He says he'd raise the funding by about $150 million immediately.
They're outright lies. There is no way you're going to grow your economy. Or I think recently he said like Canada is going to be an energy powerhouse because of the energy transition. There is no way you're going to do that if you have net zero.
We need to.
So just to keep in mind that Mark Carney is trying to silence out Canadians on social media, pushing for more money to fund the CBC, which is the state broadcaster here, public broadcaster to use in quotations. I don't really consider it a public broadcaster. They defied the public. They've defied the public so many times. I don't consider it a public broadcaster anymore. Wants to continue funding the CBC, silencing out other Canadians' voices. And keep in mind that Mark Carney, before coming into becoming prime minister, just out of whim, used to write op-eds in the Globe and Mail and used to write books about how the Canadian society needs to change, how there's a bit of a mess with Canadian society. They need to change. We need to coordinate so they change their tone, so culture is changing. And they bring to attention that Mark Carney is aggressively for net zero policies. In order to have net zero policies, we got to change the disclosure, the discourse of Canadians. And how do we do that? Silence out opposing voices on social media and push the state broadcaster to repeat this garbage. That's one of the ways.
Ultimately get to a point where every financial decision is taking climate change into account, the impact on the transition.
So it's been a colossal failure, right? Like horrific for people of the world. Mark Carney has his hand in everything. You're talking about global think tanks, leading universities, leading, financial institutions.
It's really about looking for and at transition plans from all companies and backing those who are part of the solution and taking capital away from those who are part of the problem.
He's far more dangerous because his influence is so extensive.
Well, Miss Desiree, thank you so much for joining us today. You have recently blown up on the internet by all accounts, especially here in Canada.
I felt it was important, as I have experience in working in Mark Carney's circles, and given your very important election, it was important that I speak up.
So that was someone who worked in the Mark Carney campaign. It was an ESG officer in charge of enforcing companies, corporations, NGOs, all these organizations to follow the same suit. And she goes on with Jasmine Lane to discuss how they Mark Carney is using the tools of his disposal because of how much connections he's got, because of his dark influence in globalization, is influencing stuff like censorship purposely to fall Canadians into this one globalist agenda, this agenda of net zero, this agenda of, the big pharmaceuticals, the lobby firms that really do control the world. As the movie Network said in back 1976, we don't have countries anymore. We have corporations and the international transfer of dollars. Canada's not really a country anymore. It's an asset to Mark Carney. We're just going to put out this policy that Canadians are not allowed to speak. Canadians are not allowed to address things on social media. And if they do, they're going to be cracked down just like they're doing in England. And it's a scary time for Canadians because unlike America, they're trying to do similar things. America at least kept the guns. America at least has a fighting chance back. Canada, we lost that. So it's going to be a lot worse. It's going to be a lot worse. And here is the government of Canada. This is their website, in which, whereas the president of the Treasury Board reports there is no appropriation for the payment of the sums mentioned in the schedule amounting to the agree. So this is the budget report where, as they're announcing more censorship for Canadians and censorship for people on social media, this is the budget report that they just gave the CBC $178 million. $178 million more to the public broadcaster. And just like how Trudeau mentioned in the last time they gave $600 million to the CBC, Bell Media, Rogers, and all these media outlets, the whole intent of this is to cover up the crimes and push for a certain agenda. Why else would they be giving large sums of money to this broadcaster at the same time they're talking about misogyny, hatred, bigotry among Canadians? Why would they give large sums of money to the big media outlets while pushing at the same time for censorship among individual Canadians? Because they want people to guzzle down the state-approved narratives and not listen to other rhetoric and not listen to other people and discuss openly about real crises that are happening in this country. And they'll lie to people. They'll lie to people and say that, Pierre Poilievre wants to cut the CBC arbitrarily and wants to eliminate the CBC. And this is why we're doing it, because we gotta keep these jobs intact, all the media jobs, all the people that work in the industry to be intact. Just remind people, the last time they said that, the CEO, the executives at CBC, managers were paid almost $15 million in bonuses. So all that money that they told you was going to save the broadcast industry in this country went right to the hands of the CEOs. It didn't go to the directors. It didn't go to the technical ops. Did not go to the stage floors. It did not go to the PAs. Didn't go to the anchors. Did not go to the journalists. Went right to the top. Went right to this woman here, Catherine Taint, that is her name, who testified and said that, yes, she took the money. She took the money that was given by the government, subsidized by the government, to the CBC, took it directly to flourish herself, and then demanded her network to comply with the government, not to question it, not to criticize it, not to do journalistic ethics and actually hold them account. Don't do any of that, because I'm going to get more money from them. Because that's a conflict of interest. That's why they're pushing more and more censorship, because people are calling this out. And obviously so, because that is just disgusting. That is disgusting. And they're trying to push it now onto America. And they're going after places like X because, Elon Musk is tied to S, and that automatically means that we have to silence X. we gotta silence social media because, oh my God, people connecting online and talking to each other is so awful. That's kind of the point of social media, don't you think? That if we didn't allow people to talk online on a platform, then there would be no point to social media. Then why would we have Facebook? Why would we have Instagram? Why even have this? Why even have the internet? If we're actively engaging in silencing out other people's discussions and thoughts and ideals that they want to publish out to the rest of the world on the internet. It's just absolutely disgusting. It's just going against the majority of Canadians, and they're doing this intentionally to cover up their own crimes, their own conspiracies, their own misogyny, their own racism and hatred towards many other Canadians. Because a lot of it comes from the top down. A lot of it comes from the top down, but they don't want to ever discuss that. That's why they have to quickly go on board with furthering more censorship. And sadly, I don't see a lot of blowback from the Conservatives either on this. Even though Pierre Poilievre has mentioned this numerous times, I'm surprised this didn't get mentioned in the campaign trail. I'm surprised that they're not mentioning any of this. Maybe because Pierre Poilievre wants a bit of this too. I don't know. But censorship does not help society whatsoever. It diminishes more of it.